Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and I just want to quickly remind you that all of our shows now are on audio podcast. You can find them on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify. This show will be available in audio-only version of it will be on any of those podcast platforms and many more. Just search for Barroom Network. Now, our guest today is somebody that I have been dying to have here on the Barroom Network for years, and it's this man here, Greg Gabriel, has made it happen. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing real good. How about you?
I'm doing great. Why don't you introduce your special guest?
One of my favorite all-time Bears, and a guy actually I've known since his senior year at the University of New Hampshire, Jerry Azuma.
There he is. All right.
How's it going, guys?
Great.
Real good.
Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on. Hey, just to start off, I got a question for you because I really don't. I might have known the answer a while ago, but I either forgot or never got it. But I remember I was working for the Giants in '99, and or actually '98, '99. You were in the '99 draft, so '98, and I scouted you up with New Hampshire, and then back. It was either December or January that year. I went up to UNH to work you out with this thing we called the box. We did it in the gymnasium. I don't know if you remember that.
The box.
Oh
man.
Yeah, well, it was
way back.
Combine. Yeah, this is 25 years ago or something. But
yeah.
We did it in the gym. It was agility drills that were electronically timed. But we we had you scouted and thought you were going to be a running back, and you were a hell of a running back at UNH. I think you ran for over 6,000 yards.
Yeah.
So the Bears draft you in the 5th round, 99, and they switch you over to the other side of the ball. How did that come about?
You know what? I really don't know how that came about. Like you said, I rushed for over 6,000 yards, and the ball in my hands just always felt comfortable. It always felt like home. So I did the combine as a running back, and I thought I did pretty well at the combine. I went to the Hula Bowl, and I was a running back there. And then I had several workouts as a running back. And then I would say I got invited to go to BC's Pro Day. So they're the big university that was in the area.
Right.
Went up there, and they had a guy by the name of Mike Cloud, who was a running back. I think he got drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round to the Chiefs. Really strong, really great running back. And I guess they wanted to see how I stacked up to him. So I remember doing all of the drills. And then this guy comes over to me, and he's like, hey, there's a little bit of a buzz going on that you could possibly be a defensive back. And that was the first time I ever heard of that. I was like, defensive back? Like, why would I make a living going forward, not going backwards? I've never gone. The only time I go backwards is on Madden. So we had a quick little discussion. He's like, I want to take you through some drills. So I said, all right, I've never done these drills before. I've never backpedaled. I've never, done a change of direction or any of that stuff. So if you're going to take me through these drills, I'm willing to do it. So I did it. It took about like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And he shakes my hand. And it was Phil Emery at the time who actually took me through those drills. So we all know Phil Emery became,
right.
Chicago Bears, so on and so forth. But he was the very first person, I think, that was like, you know what? There's a little bit of a buzz that you could possibly be a defensive back because of your athletic ability. And it happened. It happened with the Chicago Bears as a DB.
So, I mean, did they tell you right after they drafted you? Because it was 2 years later that we came in, and you were already a starting corner at that time.
Yeah. So I was getting calls. I was getting calls in the draft, And it was very interesting because I was like, okay, I might go in this round. I might go in this round. So I ended up sliding. I got picked up in the 5th round. The Chicago Bears were on the phone. They called me up and they said, hey, we want to draft you. And I was like, at this point, I was a little beat up and I was like, it'd be great if anybody drafted me at this point. And the Chicago Bears were like, we're going to take you. And I said, well, finally, somebody wants me to run with the football for them. And they were like, not exactly. We're looking at you as defensive back. And I was like, defensive back? I just couldn't really understand it because I've only really worked out a handful of times, small handful of times as a DB for Phil Emery. And I just didn't really understand it. But they said, you know what? We love your athletic ability. We think that you can be very productive at this level on this side of the ball. So I said, you know what, if you're willing to take a chance on me, which is a big chance because you could easily draft a defensive back, then I'm your guy. I'm going to go in there. And I already knew with the mindset that I'm going to have to play special teams and I'm just going to have to be a quick learner. And that's pretty much what happened. So I got there. I remember seeing T-Med and T-Med was like, hey, what position are you? And I was like, running back. He was like, I knew you were going to say that. I was like, okay, fine. I'm a DB. So that's pretty much how it happened. It was kind of, there was talks about it, but I didn't really think that it was something that I'd be doing at the next level because running back, I was a highly productive running back. And I thought that was the direction that I was going to go in at the next level. But there was a different calling for me and they liked me as a defensive back. And that was my career.
Well, you ended up being a pretty darn good one. But did you when you first? So you're in the off-season program shortly after you get drafted, and you're now playing a new position that you never played before in your life. What was that like?
One of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. I felt like everyone was getting their PhDs, and I was just entering kindergarten. That's what I felt like. I didn't know. I knew the game of football, but I just didn't understand it from the defensive side at all. I remember Vance Bedford, he was my position coach. And I remember talking to him and we're kind of going over like some schemes and some coverages, particular cover 2. And he's like, draw it up on the board. So I drew it up on the board and in front of everyone in the classroom, and everyone's like staring at it, just looking at it like, what is going on? And as you know, Greg, I drew it up as if I'm a running back. So Vance was like, look, everything is right, but you're a DB now. You have to draw it this way in the reverse. So just being able to see the field from a completely different standpoint was very awkward for me. Obviously, running forward and running backwards are two totally different things. And then at the time, we had Curtis Conway, who was a hell of a wide receiver for us, and Bobby Ingram. These guys were elite wide receivers at that time, and they would just take me to town because I just didn't really understand it. So when people ask me like what is one of the hardest things that you had to overcome, I would say just learning how to see the field as a defensive back and then simply backpedaling. I mean, I wasn't built for backpedaling, and now I'm doing it at the highest level possible. So things are moving so much faster. Everyone has their assignments down packed. So it was a big learning curve for me. And it took a lot of time for me to try to get a grasp of that. Luckily, I had some really good mentors that were there when I was there, and they really understood the system and understood like how to be a productive DB. Walter Harris was a guy that I just leaned on tremendously. But I really enjoyed my time. It was very difficult, I'm not going to lie. But somehow I started to really make that transition and things started to kind of slow down. I noticed that I didn't have to use all of my physical traits all at once every single time. I just started to really understand the game, and the game started to slow down a little bit for me. And then I got moved into the inside position, and that's where I basically felt comfortable. It was being a nickelback. Being out on that island is just, something that's really special that a lot of people just don't understand. You are literally on an island. And move me inside, me being the natural running back that I am, I just felt at home with all these big bodies. And I knew that I could get physical. I knew I'd be in run support with our base cover 2. So I just felt right at home when they moved me inside.
So how long was it before your rookie year ended or in year 2, so 2000, that you started to feel comfortable playing on defense as a corner?
I would say it probably took me year 3 until I really started to feel comfortable. Year 1.
So that's year 3 is when we came in. So that was our first
when
year.
You guys came in. Yeah.
Right.
And that's when I think Peanut showed up as well. We had R.W. McCord.
No, Peanut was the following year.
Yeah, the following year. So we had I think we had R.W. McCorders, we had Walter, we had Mike Brown that was there as well. So we had some guys that could make some plays and were really savvy veterans. So I was just kind of learning from them. The main thing that I took away was I knew that I had the physical ability to hang with guys, but just the mental aspect, I just had to slow the game down and just kind of study and figure out the ins and out of how the defense actually worked and how offenses were trying to attack me. And then once I started to slow that down and then they moved me to the slot, I felt like I was extremely productive from that standpoint.
Let me ask you this stuff, because I don't know if I'm getting old. My memory might be wandering a little bit here. We had a game up in Green Bay. Mm-hmm. And I remember I drove up the morning of the game and we jump out 14-0. And I know you had an early TD. I remember it as a pick 6. Aldo thought it was a kickoff return.
Kickoff return, yep.
It was a kickoff return. Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, man, there was some wonderful times in Green Bay. People always ask me, what is one of the greatest places that I've played at, stadium-wise? And I always tell people Green Bay. I grew up as a Chicago Bear fan. I was born in Oklahoma. And I would always watch the Chicago Bears with Walter Payton. And that's where the love of being a running back kind of came from. So, just knowing the tradition and the history of the Chicago Bears, and they always had the rival with Green Bay, I was like, damn, I can't wait to play in a place like that. And then finally, when I got my opportunity, I was like, wow, this place is really special. Really special. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't like the back. Can't stand their asses, but it's a really fun place to play.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, going there as a
I got a little trivia.
Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, and then I'll
I was just going to say, going up to Lambeau Field as a fan, and a diehard Chicago Bears fan, I've been since the late 1960s, but going to Lambeau Field as a fan is something I think every Chicago Bears fan should go to. And I just want to also say, the move that you make on this kick return, let me go back, let me rewind it back. This move right here. Oh, right.
You're going to play it over?
Right there. Yeah, baby, that is sweet, man.
I thought after that move, they were going to give me the chance to be a running back.
They should have.
I can't. There's nothing showing on my screen.
Oh, you're not seeing it. Oh, but Jerry, can you see it?
That's the end of it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a sensational move. And I'm sorry, Greg. Go ahead with your question.
Well, no, I was going to say a little trivia for people listening in. The last touchdown at the old Soldier Field before they did the renovation was scored by this guy on a pick 6 of Donovan McNabb in January 2002. And probably about 3 hours after that pick 6, the wrecking ball was already banging away at the stadium.
I think I almost got hit by it.
Here it is.
Some fun times, man. It's a lot of fun, a lot of history, a lot of tradition. It was great way back then, way back in those black and white days, I think that is.
It was easy to find.
So you played for Dick Duran, and Greg Blosh was your defensive coordinator.
Yes.
And then we came in with, and Lovie comes in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Greg.
but we come in 2004 and Lovie installs a new defense. Was that like a whole new learning curve for you with Lovie's defense as compared to the defense Greg ran?
Yes, very, very much so. Lovie was a standard, Tampa 2 type of guy. So he expected his corners to be into run defense and to jam at the line of scrimmage and do things like that, which I loved. I loved the contact and the physicality of it. So it was kind of playing up to my strengths. And I know beforehand, when Dick was there, we were playing a lot of like cover one, and that was very difficult to me because it just took a lot of time for me to figure out how to guard people one-on-one and then figure out the NFL rules behind that, which you can't touch any. So we came and they switched to cover two. I felt like I felt extremely comfortable being in that system. And then we had rock stars on our defense too. I mean, we had Ted Washington, Keith Traylor, and then we had obviously Brian Urlacher. We had Lance Briggs, we had Mike Brown, we had Peanut Tillman. Like we had some rock stars on this defense, and it was just a lot of fun to play in. And you always wanted to be the next person to make plays. And we were just built on strength. We were built on speed, overall team speed. And Lovie just always preached, take the ball away. And we got really good at it. And it became really fun. It became competitive amongst us to go out there and force turnovers and take the ball away. So those are some of the glory years, man. I mean, we had some characters on our team. They played free, they played fast, they understood the game. We helped each other out tremendously. It was just a lot of fun to play for that team.
Yeah, it was. Those were the good old days. But look at my friend. I know you got some things you got to go to.
I got one more question for him.
Okay.
I got one more question.
Okay.
Jerry, this is from my co-host on the show that we do on Tuesday nights. He wanted me to ask you this question, but actually I'm going to have him ask it.
I honestly thought that the 0-1 team was a team of destiny. The comebacks against San Francisco, Cleveland. I mean, to be down 21-7 with 32 seconds to go and you win the game. And the way Mike Brown won both of those games, it just felt this is our year, man. And you're balling and Ted Washington and R.W. McQuarters. I mean, it's fun, man. And then the final game ever at Soldier Field, the original Soldier Field, and the confounding loss to Donovan McNabb. And so I guess my open-ended question to you is like, what happened? It's just like everything that went right suddenly was wrong. I know that's a simplistic take, but it's like suddenly McNabb was like balling like he was like Jordan in 97. Yeah. You thought when Jim Miller got hurt, not that I wanted Jim hurt, but Shane Matthews had led these comebacks and we're going to be okay after Hugh Douglas hit Jim Miller, but we weren't okay. And the Bears' fantastic season of 13-3 was swept away in a heartbreaking defeat. So in your own words, sir, what the hell happened?
Well, we ran into a really good team. I believe that they went pretty deep and they were taking the show on the road with the Eagles. And Donovan, they were led by Donovan McNabb. So offensively, they had weapons all over the place, and we knew that. We knew that we could hang with them, but man, we just had a couple of like really silly breakdown type of plays, but we were still in the game, And then some things happened and the game kind of broke us apart wide open, and then we just weren't able to recover. Everybody talks about the offense, and we can't just keep on blaming the offense because we're the ones that gave up all those points. So we had a lot of different breakdowns over the course of that game that kind of picked away at what we were trying to do defensively, and we just couldn't stop it. It was just one of those situations where they just caught us at the right time on a bad day pretty much. And that was just kind of the end of the season. But that season was extremely magical. I mean, the things that we were able to do during that season was fantastic. Mike Brown with the Deja 2, back to back. We just had a type of energy and we just had a lot of swagger, a lot of vibe. We were vibing. It was just a really fun time to play football and to be alive. And it all came crashing down with that goddamn Donovan McNabb. Yeah.
Well, I think that was Andy Reid's first playoff team, and we found out since what a darn good coach he is.
Yeah, he's a fantastic coach. Fantastic.
Well,
coach.
Jerry, I promised you I could let you go after 20 because you got some stuff to do. So thank you very, very much for coming on. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much, Greg and Aldo. It was a pleasure being on, and hopefully I can be on soon.
Oh, we'd love to
Sounds
have you
good.
back, brother.
All right. You guys take care. Thank you.
Take
See
care.
you later. Okay.
What a treat. What a treat that was, Greg.
That was
Thank you
fun.
very much. He's one of my favorite all-time players. And you reminded me, just before we went live that he was a running back at New Hampshire. And what a clever decision it was to put him at the defensive backfield. And then when you move him into the slot, that's where things started to really click. And he had that incredible speed, so he helped out in special teams like we saw the touchdown against Green Bay. He was a great, great player for our Chicago Bears in that magical season, like you said.
Well, what's odd is that you see wide receivers make the conversion to DB.
Yeah.
In fact, jokingly, we used to say a DB is a wide receiver who can't catch. So, but I think he might be one of the few, if the only guy that went from running back to corner. That is a difficult transition.
Wow. J2K is telling us that Chip Kelly was his coach at New Hampshire.
Chip Kelly was a longtime coach at UNH.
Man, I didn't know that.
And he went from UNH out to Oregon.
Mm-hmm. And just sitting here and talking about that season, I'm getting chills because I'll never forget that feeling of that game against the Cleveland Browns. They're leading through most of the game. The cameras are showing the Browns on the sideline. They're laughing it up. They're like trash talking against the Bears. And while we start to mount that comeback, the words that came out of my mouth were "F you, guy." I mean, I just went nuts as a fan. It was so awesome.
I got a confession to make that I about that game. So I had, it was my first year here, and I was going home after the game because I was basically my first season here. I was commuting between Buffalo and here. So I lived at the Marriott Suites in Deerfield when I was here, and then I'd go home every couple of weeks for a couple of days. Well, I was going home, and I had a friend here for the game. So when it got to like a minute left and it looked like it was over, we took off. I neper saw the comeback. I got to the airport and it was like, we fucking won. I really guilty as charged right here.
Holy cow! Yeah, I've got a rule as a fan: never turn it off when you watch on TV. Never leave early because you just might miss history. You just might miss it. And so I've been to games where
ever since that game, I'm with you because that 2 touchdowns in 29 seconds is
unbelievable.
Just absolutely incredible.
It's incredible, man. I'm telling you, I'm really getting chills just thinking about that moment, one of the great moments in Bears history. So let's hope for some more great moments. And I got to tell you, this week, today, as we're taping on Thursday, June 15th, is the final day of mandatory veteran camp. And I think the final practice will be over in about 20-30 minutes. And so we've got
and if I wouldn't be surprised if he cuts it short. They always cut the last day short. So
as a reward to players, is that typically the reason why?
Yeah, I mean, when he did his presser yesterday, he said we're going to work on red zone and stuff, but he made it right away. I said, yeah, he's going to cut this one about a half hour short.
Well, that's great. And I got to tell you, one of the things that I was really pleased to see was the interview that Tevin Jenkins had with the media. I mean, I almost feel like playing the whole thing because it was so revealing. But I've got a couple of clips from that. And the first one that I want to play for you, Greg, is him talking about injuries and how he plans to stay healthy throughout 2023. He's been working on certain muscles. This is Tevin Jenkins. The soundbite is 30 seconds long.
Just basically lengthen and strengthen muscles and working on all the small muscles that you never think about. It's like those like small interior muscles around my neck to build that up so nothing happens again, so I don't get no stingers. I don't have another lapse of wherever it happened. When we play the Eagles, I don't have anything happen to my back again. I'm doing those muscles around the spine that make it a lot stronger so those things don't flare up.
You're working with people here or doing some independently as well?
Independently. And here as well. I mean, the strength coach here is really good.
So he compliments the Bears strength coach. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who that is and what your familiarity is with him?
Well, Jimmy Arthur is the lead strength coach. I'm not familiar with any of his assistants, so I don't know if he's referring about Jimmy or the assistants. But Jimmy, I worked with Jimmy for 6 years, maybe 5-6 years, and he was Rusty Jones' lead assistant and fully buys into Rusty's program. And really, that program isn't just strength and conditioning, but it's nutrition. They're real big on body fat, really body and lean weight, body fat, percentage of body fat. And I know when I had a talk with Ryan Poles, he said, when I was at Kansas City, we never had anybody like these guys. He goes, we might have won more championships if we did, because they're so big into that you got, corners are supposed to have X amount of body fat and X amount of lean weight. Safeties are a little bit different from them. Running backs are a little bit different from them. Wide receivers are similar to corners. Offensive and defensive linemen obviously can have more body fat, but it's a lot of it's the lean weight too. And they figure out, I hope I'm explaining this well, but he figures out what is the right weight for the person that person can carry and be a productive athlete. And so, and the last, he doesn't want a guy to go like, you draft a guy and he's 280 and you don't want him to be 300 the next year or 305 the next year because he hasn't put on good weight. They want him to put on lean muscle weight and not add fat to it, because fat slows you down. So it's an advanced program. They're very good at it. These guys are all buying into it. But a lot of it, the first thing they teach you about is nutrition and to eat the right way. And I remember I might have told the story, so I apologize if I did. But, Rusty gets Rusty's first year here, and he gets everybody's bought into was Lovie's second year. Lovie didn't like the strength coach he had. He was a carryover from Dick Duran. Didn't like we were getting a lot of injuries, didn't like the program. So we brought in Rusty, who had been at Buffalo for about 20 years at that point and very, very successful. And so Rusty sells this program to the players. Players buy into it. They're eating right. They lose a lot of body fat. They feel great. So now it's Saturday before the first game. And there was a tradition here for years that for the meetings and walkthrough on Saturday, the day before the game, the rookies had to bring in donuts and McDonald's breakfast sandwiches and stuff for the veterans and the coaching staff and the training staff. And of course, Rusty didn't know this. And in the eating room, there's all this junk food. So he walks in and goes absolutely berserk.
Oh my God.
When he sees this, throws it all on the floor, starts MFing everybody. He goes, you son of a bitches that worked for the last 6 months just to ruin it in one day. Never happened again. Nobody ever saw a donut in that place again on a Saturday.
That's wild. All right. So I don't have a soundbite for this. I have another one from Tevin, but I'll play in a second. But I also wanted to comment and get your reaction to Tevin saying that he is much more comfortable and accepting of the fact that he's a guard. When asked why are you accepting of it now more this year? Because last year you said you were a tackle. He said, my job title. So he realizes this is it. This is what I'm going to play.
Well, I think part of it is you played pretty damn good. And so he saw what he could do with the position. And I'll tell you, he's not the first guy who was a tackle in college that ended up playing inside the NFL. Mm-hmm. The NFL's loaded with them. And there's a lot of guys who have been Pro Bowl players at the guard position that were originally tackles in college. Mm-hmm. So, he's not the first. Yeah, it's something that's tough to swallow when it first happens because you're thinking of what you are, but it just turned out that, he's a pretty athletic guy, and you have to have athleticism in this outside zone scheme. And so he ends up being the perfect fit for this scheme to play inside. And we saw the results.
Yep.
I mean, I'll tell you, it's been a long time since I've seen a guard play that physical in a Chicago Bears uniform. I mean, he just destroys people.
He really does. And I'm so excited about the fact that he and Nate Davis and Cody Whitehair are going to be the interior of this offensive line. This running game is really, I think, going to improve the running back portion of running. No offense towards David Montgomery, but I just think that the interior of the offensive line is really going to help this offensive line. All right, I want to play for you.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a strong running game and take away Justin Fields from the equation. Just a strong running game from the backs will really help Justin in the passing game, especially when you get into like play action situations.
Right. Now, I think this is something you're really going to enjoy listening to if you haven't already. But this is Tevin Jenkins being asked about the two interior defensive linemen that the Bears drafted, Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens.
Very good hand usage out of both of them right now. Those two really know how to set up inside and outside moves. I'm seeing it right now. I've been impressed with how they've been rushing so far. And we're not even doing power attacks right now. So just seeing their speed game right now, out of like how big, even though how big they are, is just surprising. And when I do in training camp, when we put the pads on, they're going to be much of a harder rushers when they can actually start bull rushing.
So I know, and when guys are playing in their underwear, you really can't tell a lot. But the way he phrased that is he was impressed with hand usage. And I guess you can, in OTAs, get a sense of this guy's using his hands right. So am I right there, or is he just
I mean, theoretically, you can't have any contact. But, I mean, they're doing drills where they're using their hands. And I've seen some clips of these guys going through some of the bag drills that they do, and that really shows their athleticism, their change of direction, their body control, their quickness, and they have all that. It's learning. I mean, they're playing in entirely different schemes than they played in college, so it's really just learning the scheme. And it's not that it's that hard. It's just that they're being asked to do different things. And in this scheme, the interior defensive linemen got to be disruptive. They've got to get penetration to disrupt that run game. So that means you've got to get off the ball quickly. And one of the things that kind of jumped out on tape with Dexter is that he wasn't always the first guy off the ball. And then you find out later, and that's the problem sometimes with watching tape and not knowing what they're being told to do.
Yes.
But they were playing more of a read and contain type defense and a two-gap defense. So he wasn't asked to disrupt like he's going to be asked to do here. And so it's a whole different in philosophy. So now he can let his athleticism take over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. All right, let's move on to this is DeMarcus Walker talking about that defensive line. And apparently Walker, when he first arrived at the team, he kind of kept his mouth shut. He was kind of feeling things out. And during when he would get on the field, he started to express himself more. And then Eddie Jackson, the veteran, said, I want to hear more of that. I want to hear more of that. So he's really been a veteran leadership. This is DeMarcus Walker, in his own words, talking about the value of being a veteran leader.
I mean, you only get 1 year. People just think that to where if you got a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, I got 4 years. No, you got now. You take care of this year, they'll take care of next year. And that's where we're trying to get the maturity to all the players to get to. So, yeah, I mean, we got the number 1 pick last year, so what is there to be happy about? What is there to celebrate about? Like, anything that we're doing, we're trying to, like, lay on a new foundation to get to the promised land. And so, I mean, this is just from, learning from Super Bowl champions at the Broncos, learning from guys who won when Houston went on that run and lost to the Chiefs in that big run. And, the Titans was they had the first seed 2 years ago. So, I mean, all that maturity and wisdom definitely helped me get these guys to challenge them every single day.
This guy is a player. He's not a superstar player by any means, but he's a productive player. And listening to him talk as a veteran leader, this is encouraging, isn't it?
He's a grunt. I mean, when you watch the tape, and I get what Flus wants to do with him, play him outside. The run defense sucked last year. We all know that. So he's trying to make first and second down that much tougher. So you got guys like him and Green that can play defensive end on your base downs. And Walker, you can move inside when you get into pass rush situations, because he had most of his success as really an interior pass rusher, not an outside pass rusher. And the reality is, he's played a lot of 5 technique. He hasn't played much defensive end like they play here, but he's going to help the run defense. But I saw a clip, and it was just a few days ago. It was on Twitter. And, something like it was on his Twitter account about like always working or something like that. Now, I wonder if he had gone home over the weekend and, after OTAs ended last week, and then was working out on his own because it was a brand new video, but he was doing some bag drills, and very, very impressive. His quickness, his explosiveness, his change of direction, his ability to bend all showed up on this little maybe 30-second video that he had on Twitter. So he's an interesting guy. No, he's not going to be a Pro Bowl type guy, but you need a bunch of these guys. I use the phrase win with or win because of. He's not a guy you win because of. He's the guy you win with. And he helps your team. He helps your team get stronger. And if he becomes a good leader, that's even better.
Yeah, I think I found that video as you were talking. Let me play it here. Is this the one you were referring to?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. It looks like it's speeded up. He's so quick. He's got some strength, too. So a nice addition to this Bears team. All right, let's move on. I want to play a little sound from Robert Tonyan, the former Green Bay Packer. Of course, he's got familiarity not only with the offense that Luke Getsy is running, but with Luke himself. And this is about a minute long. This is Tonyan talking about the offense and Luke.
It's very versatile. Like, personnel-wise, you can put anyone in there and run the same exact plays, different looks to the same formations or a bunch of motions or whatever it is. I think that's like a good offense is a lot of smoke in the mirror to get what you want accomplished. I'm just really excited to kind of be a part of, the creativity that Luke has brought. No, he's just smart. He's he's awesome. Like he's really in there grinding to like win games and make us better. Genuinely loves like the men in this locker room. So, I saw him as like a receiver and quarterback coach. So now like him running the meetings and him out there, getting after people and on the microphone, the QB microphone, it's just cool to kind of see like his growth as well as like, he saw me come from, a practice squad receiver, quarterback receiver turned tight end. So it's just cool to, see each other's growth.
Greg, I know it was very difficult to grade Luke Getsy last season because, let's face it, the roster, you couldn't even call it, year one of the rebuild because they were gutting the roster. And so the players on the team, it's hard to evaluate. But based on what you have seen, what is your feeling about Luke Getsy and how good of an offensive coordinator can he become?
I think, to be fair, you got to say it's incomplete or it's an unknown because he was playing with a deck of cards that didn't have any picture cards in it. So we only saw a glimpse. I like his philosophy. Number one, I've always liked the offense. Mm-hmm. Okay, the offense itself is very, very good. And it's very similar to Green Bay's, the Rams, San Francisco, all those guys score points. So it's the scheme is good. Now, obviously they're going to construct it in such a way to build into the strengths of the players they have. So are the plays the exact same thing? Not necessarily. Some will be, but then there's going to be some that are going to show, what the strengths of certain players are. Like Green Bay has never been a team that had a big, as far as I can remember anyway, a big tight end like Komet, who's a big guy and athletic. They have guys, and like San Francisco too. San Francisco got Kittle. And Kittle's actually a small guy for a tight end. He might not be 250 pounds, and he tries to block. And he gets fairly good production, but his production is as a move tight end. It was almost like a big receiver, and that's what a lot of these teams that play this offense have had, and that's what Tanyan fits into. He's your move guy, and Komet is going to be the why, but because Komet is athletic as he is, it gives them a dimension that none of these teams have had at that position, which I think in itself is going to be pretty interesting.
There's been a lot of talk about this growing connection between Justin Fields and DJ Moore. Again, playing in your underwear. So how much of a grain of salt should we take when we're hearing these positive reports about that connection?
I wrote an article yesterday, and it's how social media has changed things. OTAs haven't been around that long. I mean, we're talking just a little over 20 years. And before that, the off-season each team had an off-season program, but it was, done pretty much the way they wanted to do it. They didn't have all the rules that they have now. Mm-hmm. But even going back, and I was going to bring it up with Jerry, but we never got into it. Like, there was no such thing as Twitter when Zoom was here. Didn't exist. And Dick wanted to get the guys out of here, and Dick wanted to get the hell out of here too. So, and we could have 15 OTAs back then, not 9 like you have now, or 12 or wherever the hell they are. And I think it's 12. He did them all in 1 week. He had 2 days.
That's right.
Or, so one practice in the morning, another one in the afternoon. So we'd have 2 OTAs per day. Mm-hmm. And then about 9 days, we were really done, because you give them off for the weekend. And, you didn't hear anything about it. The media was seldom there. Who was good, who wasn't good, didn't matter. Because what this is, and I want to emphasize this because I I keep seeing this stuff, oh, Justin didn't have a good day. Who the fuck cares? It's preparing for training camp. That's all it is. It's getting the new guys acclimated to the system so that when you put pads on, and you got to go through 3 or 4 practices now in July when training camp opens up the last week of July, you're still doing this almost another 3 or 4 days of OTA / mini camp, however you want to call it, because you got to ramp these guys up, and it's part of the collective bargaining agreement that you can't have contact yet. So it's what happens now means nothing. Nobody's going to remember it come August 15th. Nobody's going to care about it come August 15th. But everybody makes a big freaking deal about it.
Yep.
I was listening to the radio coming back. I played golf yesterday. I'm coming back from my golf match. And they're talking, but, you might be holding on to the ball too long. I wanted to hit the radio.
You should have called in.
Well, why didn't you, and I felt like saying, why didn't you say that there was only one starting receiver out there yesterday, and that was DJ? And maybe the coverage is pretty good. Don't forget, you're going, if he goes 15 for 15 in a 7-on-7 drill or a 11-on-11 drill, that means your defense sucks because you're playing against yourself. So you want wins on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And
Indeed.
Nobody takes that into consideration. They think about one thing. How's the offense doing? Well, you know what? We got defense out there too, and they're trying to grow, and they're trying to learn. But this is strictly prep for, it's making sure guys are in shape, get them ready, and so that when you start training camp in the end of July, you hit the ground running. And really go back and just give you a little history, even before we had these off-season programs and why there used to be so many two-a-days. You had the two-a-days because there wasn't an off-season program. You didn't have this stuff. And so a lot of guys came into camp out of shape. Some guys had off-season jobs. Mm-hmm. And so it became a tradition that you had to first work these guys into shape, and you had a small amount of time to do it. So you worked them twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
But now, the amount of money they're getting paid, a lot of the off-season program is about the mental part of the game. Learning the offense, learning the defense, learning how to do it, because you can't hit anybody. Mm-hmm. So you're taking the football out of the football, or the physicality. You're taking the physicality out of the football. And when people want to sit there and make us think about it and critique the players, I think it's clickbait. It's a waste of money. We used to have, going into camp, this goes back into the 80s, and before there was a salary cap. And I've talked about this before, but camp would open up. You might have 2 or 3 draft picks unsigned, and probably at least a half a dozen and maybe 10 veterans unsigned. Mm-hmm. And the veterans knew that, okay, it's going to be my second contract, probably my last contract. I'm going to let this one go on for a little while. Why? Because I don't want to go through 2-a-days.
Yeah.
This will be my vacation summer because it's never going to happen again. And so they planned it that way. And you knew that's what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And after about the second preseason game, we'll get a deal done now because they had their vacation. And you know what? It didn't hurt the football. The football was pretty damn good.
It sure was.
Okay,
they tackled a lot better back then.
Yeah, but and these guys are pros, mm-hmm. But for people to sit and criticize how a guy looks in an OTA or a mini camp. Give me a freaking break. I just, it just runs, especially just reading some of the stuff I've read over the last week drives me up a wall because it's just, there's no sense to it. Doesn't mean anything.
Well, I'm going to get you riled up probably a little bit more because Preston brought this to my attention. I have not listened to Waddle and Sylvie recently, but he wants your reaction to a take on Waddle and Sylvie reporting that the Bears organization is not happy with Chase Claypool. And I went quickly to take a look to get some more information on this. And according to an article at Fansided, here's the quote. According to Waddle and Sylvie of ESPN Chicago, rumors are that many within the Bears organization are not happy with where Chase Claypool is at currently. Reports are that although he has time to get healthy and fully learn the playbook before training camp, many believe he is not self-motivated. So Preston asks, what do you think about this report?
I think it's horseshit. And I'll tell you why. Number one, I've followed this player very closely since he was a freshman at Notre Dame. And I know people that coached him at Notre Dame. And he was a guy that, he's a Canadian kid. So he had to make that. He played Canadian high school football, which isn't anywhere near as good as anything around in the Chicagoland area or anywhere else. And so he had to make that adjustment, yet he played a lot as a freshman, but he first made his mark on special teams as a cover guy in special teams and, covering kicks, covering punts. Tough guy. He's up for a contract now. See, I think,
exactly
with the media here, Aldo, you're not allowed to have an incomplete pass if you're Justin Fields. See, they treat these practices like it's a freaking playoff game. So, and it's practice. And with a guy, now I've heard Flus talk about Claypool twice. And both times, if you just listen between the lines, there wasn't anything that came out that showed any kind of disappointment on his part. He's got some soft tissue things we're working through. Now, I could say this. If this was during the regular season or during training camp, he'd be practicing. Mm-hmm. But why let a situation like this get worse? And perhaps it's a minor soft tissue thing. And so you let it heal. He's sitting in the meetings. He's going through the mental part of the game. He's out of practice watching it. Don't tell me he's not learning the playbook. You're mentally going through every play when you're out there. I played football too. I know what goes on when you're on the practice field. Mm-hmm. And so, and I also know how the training staff treats injuries this time of year.
Very
they err to the size of caution.
Right.
Because it's important to not miss time when it counts come August.
Yep.
So I think my take on this, made up because that's what they thrive on here. Thrive on negativism. According to my source. Who's your fucking source? Besides nobody.
Well, and I have not heard the actual clip from the show, but according to that fan-sided report written by Rob Schwartz, he says that Waddle and Sylvie are saying it's a rumor. So
rumors are rumors means I made it up. I'm starting the rumor. Mike Florio's made a ton of money doing that.
I knew I'd get you started. All right, let's move on. Frank wants to know, did you ever have a heated exchange with the GM or coaches regarding a draft pick you wanted picked? If so, can you tell us more about that? Who was the player? What was the situation and so forth?
Well, first of all, on draft day, seldom. Because, especially after I came here, because, I ran the scouting department. You have those arguments or discussions in your meetings leading up. You have meetings in December, you have meetings in February, you have meetings in April leading up to the draft. And there's going to be differences of opinion on a player.
Mm-hmm.
So how strong is your belief in that player? And are you willing to jump on the table for him? And, I know I'm an asshole. I'm going to jump. If I want a guy and I really like a guy, I'm not giving up until I know it's over. I can't win. And so I would keep the discussion going. Now, that's when I was a scout. So that was the entire time at New York. And George Young kind of preached that type of philosophy. So I was brought up in it. And it's like, if you're going to agree with me, I don't need you.
It's a great philosophy.
Yeah, I want contrary opinions. And if you believe in a player, fight for him. So if you're not willing to fight for him, then you must not believe in him. That's the way I think. But now when I was here, and then I was in a decision-making role, and I had a report on a guy, and my scout had a report on a guy, let's say it was the area scout or something, and he was a lot different than I was on my report. I said, well, one of us is wrong, and one of us is right, or maybe it's something in the middle. And so I said, we got to watch more tape. But I'd watch tape with that person.
That's smart.
And then I tried to do it this way. I know what he thinks of the player. I know what he likes and dislikes about that player. He knows what I like and dislike. So although you look at it through my eyes, and I'm going to look at it through your eyes and see if I come up with something different. And there were times where I said, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong. You got this guy right. And don't forget, he's seeing, as an area scout, he's seeing the player a lot more than I was, who might have caught one day of practice and saw 4 game films.
Yeah.
So, but it's really how you just want to treat things. But when it comes to the draft, 95% of the time your decisions are made before, and everybody's on board before you even start the draft.
Good stuff. I always really appreciate when you give us some insight as to what's going on behind the scenes. Got a question here from Michael Henneman, who asks, how many wide receivers will the Bears keep, and will there be a surprise cut here? So I got the website open here. I can read off some names. Let me see if I can also put it up on the screen for us. Let me do that. And
I can't see it because I'm using my phone today.
Okay.
Instead of my laptop. But I think the number is 6.
Right.
Now, you're going to have at least 5 dressed on Sunday. And you could dress 6, but 5 and 6 have to be able to play special teams. If one of those guys can't play teams, he's not dressing. Because you just have to have a certain amount of players that can play teams. Now, what happens when you're putting a roster together, and you're getting it, and on paper you want to have X amount of linebackers, X amount of DBs, corners, safeties, wide receivers, or whatever. But what comes into play again is special teams. And so there could be a player who, when you look at his talent, let's just say wide receiver, for the sake of this discussion, he might be the 7th best pure wide receiver, but he's a hell of a special teams player.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to cut number 6 because number 7 can play teams better than number 6. Or maybe number 6 can't play teams at all.
Okay.
So that plays into it a lot, and especially when you're trying to round out the bottom of the roster.
Good stuff. All right. Another question here. Justin Jones, and Creighton actually asked this for Jerry Azuma, but I'd love your take on it. Justin Jones really went after Green Bay Packers fans, said that they were the stupidest, that he really was hoping that Aaron Rodgers didn't leave. It probably is a good thing that Aaron Rodgers did leave because he wants to beat the Packers so bad. What do you think about that? Do you think it offers bulletin board material for the Packers, or do you think that, hey, it's cool, let him express himself?
No, it's June.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to forget that he said it. Now, somebody may bring it up, for going into week 1, but the game's here. It's not up in Green Bay. So if the game was in Green Bay, somebody from Green Bay may say that, and to rile up the fans to get them a little louder. And they got a pretty good group of fans out there. Personally, like you were saying when we were talking to Jerry, you've been up there a few times for games. They're nice people. They're cordial. I've gone up for a number of games when I was working there, and a lot of times I'd take my stepson and my wife, and I'd go in, and they'd stay out and wander the parking lot, and there was oftentimes Green Bay fans would bring them over into their tailgate and give them some drinks and some other stuff, and they were just really nice people. And I think that's one of the tough things about going to games at Soldier Field, and I hope that when they get to Arlington Park, and I do believe that's where it's going to be, I think all this other stuff is just politics. But the tailgating situation at Soldier Field now, sucks. You got a couple small lots where you can have it, and then after that, you might have to park a couple miles away.
Yeah, it's the worst. It
Yeah,
really
so
is the worst. Hate it.
Yeah, so like at Buffalo, it's great, and tailgates are awesome there because these monstrous parking lots surround 80% of the stadium.
Mm.
On the one end of the stadium is the facility, the team facilities and offices and things like that. So there's no parking there, but the rest of it is all parking, and then even across the street. And their tailgate situation is just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're going to have that wherever the new stadium is, I think that'll increase the way I want to say it, the fan experience.
Mm-hmm.
Make the fan experience that much better.
Indeed, absolutely. Let's get a few more questions in here, and then we'll pull the plug on this edition. Okay, we've got to get Don Burr, our resident Detroit Lions lover. Got to get him involved. He says, does Greg fear how good Hutchinson will be in James Houston, the first rookie duel with 20 sacks in 20 years, Detroit? So he's basically asking about these two young studs that they have pass rushing the quarterback, Hutchinson and Houston. How good would you rank those guys, or your anticipation of how good they can be?
Hutchinson is a hell of a player.
Mm-hmm.
Whether Houston's going to be anywhere close to that remains to be seen. Hutchinson's proved it on the NFL level. I mean, he was real good coming out of Michigan, second pick in the draft. His agent is our good friend Mike McCartney, and I think he's just scratching the surface of how good he can be. He's going to be a dynamic defensive end of the league, similar to the Bosa's. And that's good for Detroit. It's good for him. It's good for football. But do I think they're going to have two guys with 20 sacks? No. They might not have. You know how hard it is to get 20 sacks?
Oh, my goodness. Jeez. Ain't going to happen.
Right.
Ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I think there's only been 1 year when somebody said, no, I don't know if anybody's had 20 sacks yet in a year.
Yeah.
Didn't Quinn set the record a couple of years ago, 19 and a half or 18 and a half, whatever that was?
I agree. What's his name from the Giants, who's on every TV show nowadays?
Michael Strahan. But he had, that was and his last sack that year was a gimme. Favre laid down when he
that was so obvious.
Yeah. Okay.
The gall to deny that he didn't give him that. That was ridiculous. Mr. Inglewood wants to know, do you think that the Bears have a formidable enough secondary to go up against Justin Jefferson of the Vikings, Christian Watson of the Packers, and Jameson Williams?
Wait a minute, Christian Watson? Come on, he had a couple of good games at the end of the year, and you're going to put him in Canton?
That's right.
And he had somebody who's going to be in Canton thrown to him. Who's he got thrown to him now? Justin Jefferson's a different story. I think the secondary last year, we talked about this a lot. I think there's a shitload of talent on the secondary. I'm not sure about the depth at safety, but I think the corners, guys got banged up last year, and some of these young guys had to play, and you saw that, hey, they got some talent there. And then you got two draft choices this year. Both are pretty damn good players. And you got all these guys who were learning last year. Yeah, I think it's going to be the most competitive position in camp on defense. Running back on offense, and excuse me, corner on defense.
By the way, Swift says that Strahan had 22 and a half. So thanks for that,
Okay.
Swift. He looked that up. And then Joe O'Donnell just popped in with this question. Do you think we've done enough with the offensive line, or are we not done yet bolstering that OL?
I think as your starting five, we know who the guards and tackles are. The center's either going to be Whitehair or Patrick. That's a done deal. Is the depth what you want? I can't say yes. I can't say no because we haven't seen him, and we're not going to see him until August. And I've been down on Borum, but down on Borum because I don't think he's a starter. I think he's an adequate backup. He can get you out of the game. I just don't think he has the movement skills that are preferred in this type of offense.
Okay.
But, you put him in another scheme and he may be, I'm not going to say a star, but a damn good player. But who knows what Leatherwood is? I think, it's to be determined on the depth of the offensive line. But I think, the starting five and the loser of the Patrick Whitehair battle is going to give you at least one viable backup. Then some of these guys like Carter, the rookie last year, Leatherwood, Borum. You have this kid, Huey, a free agent, undrafted free agent from Pitt, who would have been drafted if it wasn't for the injuries he had at Pitt. They're interesting guys, but let's see what they're like when the bullets start flying.
Yep. And you talked about Dieter Iceland on our last show.
Yeah, Dieter. I forgot that Dieter Iceland is he's a good backup. I mean, he had to play a little bit last year and played well. So I really, inside, I'm not worried about. It's who's the third tackle and who's the fourth tackle, and are they good enough?
Right. Well, I'm still pulling for Larry Borum. I hope that he can.
Well, I know he can play right tackle.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but I mean, you need a swing guy to dress, because you usually only dress 7 on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You dress 8 when you're not sure what your depth is, and you preferably have a guy who can play both tackle positions and guard, and then a guy who can play guard and center as your 6th and 7th guy on Sunday. But you go to 8 when you're not sure exactly what that depth is, and you need another guy just in case.
Greg, I saw that you put up on Twitter, you commented on the fact that the pool of available pass rushers is dwindling quickly.
Yep.
So
There's one left.
I understand. Yeah, I understand what Ryan Poles is doing in terms of his meticulous way of building this squad. But do you think that maybe he's made a mistake here and not jumping on one of these pass rushers, who I think, Leonard Floyd's contract, it could get up to $10 million or so with incentives. And then a couple of the other contracts I thought were really, really fair-minded.
Well, I tweeted out too. I said the market's been set.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go out and sign Ngakoue, it's been set what he's getting.
And
now,
he just
the interesting thing is this, and I was looking up some things that had no agent listed, and I thought, well, maybe they just didn't know who the agent is. He didn't have an agent. He just hired them a couple days ago.
Exactly.
He hired Drew, and which tells me I'm not taking part in OTAs, go to a mini camp. I don't want to. It's like, hold on. I'm taking the spring off. Now, the guy is known as a worker.
He is.
So you're not worried about him not being in shape. He just didn't want to go through all this stuff. Like Nate Davis said yesterday. So they never take part in the first part of the off-season program. I got my own routine I go through.
Right. And
that's their prerogative. It is voluntary. And he
probably has no interest at all in learning the Bears' run defense.
Well, no, you know what? That's a little bit of a fallacy too, because I went back and I looked at. I mean, he's not a bust as a run defender. He's just not the greatest run defender. But I looked through his play time in his years in the league. He's averaged like 71% of the defensive snaps throughout his career.
Oh,
okay, so that means he's playing a lot more than just as a designated pass rusher. In fact, he's had as high as like 77%.
I tend to agree with Cornelius here. He says that he thinks Poles already has his edge rushers on this team. And I believe that he has some faith in Gibson and some of these players. He thinks that they're going to play. And maybe even, this Terrell Lewis, the kid from Alabama.
Oh, shit. Here we go. I wrote that too. Terrell Lewis beat the number 1 pick. Right, 3 times for sacks in practice. Yeah, but Wright can't use his hands and can't hit the guy. So how did he beat him? Yeah, and that's one of the things I make my point out. They make Wright out to look bad with making that statement when the truth is he can't do anything about it.
Yes, very true. Very true.
So, I don't want to see the BS. It's just, and to me, it was indirectly throwing a shot at Darnell Wright and purposely throwing a shot at Darnell. It wasn't trying to push up Lewis. It was trying to knock Wright.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
He can't even block a free agent defensive end.
CJ Williams says he's got a sneaky suspicion that this is a development year for the defense and they ride with who they got. And we just lost Greg's video, so hopefully we'll get him back. And Swift says Terrell Lewis has some upside, but Greg is right about making a big deal out of June reps.
I lost you for 1 second there. What start your sentence?
Yeah, CJ was saying that he thinks he has a sneaky suspicion that this is a development year for the defense and that they ride with who they got. And I just got to remind everyone that Poles said we're not going to fix everything with this in this offseason.
That's true, but Flu said it again yesterday. We're looking for a defensive end. So now it's 3 times it's been said. Twice by Flus and once by Poles.
Interesting.
So and Biggs tweeted it yesterday. There's a couple older guys. There's Houston, who played in Kansas City, but he's 34. There's Ingram. He's 34. I just can't see Poles pulling the trigger on one of those guys. And so that leaves really one guy, Ngakoue, unless you make a trade for somebody. So I'm talking man on the street. There's one guy. There's Ngakoue. Now, could there be somebody in the trade market? Sure. Who? I don't know.
Yeah, there has been speculation. I even threw in the possibility of a trade in one of his comments this season. I agree 100% with Swift. Terrell Lewis has some upside, but Greg is right about making a big deal out of June reps. Remember, Carson Taylor was beating Jenkins last year at this time, and he's right. He just can't make a big deal out of these June reps. Let's see if we got
reps without pads and that you can't hit the other guy.
Yeah. What do you think about Robert Quinn? A couple of people have brought up Robert Quinn.
That ain't happening.
Not happening? Why?
Not happening. He did nothing last year for this group while he was here. Did nothing when he went to Philly. And nobody's tried to sign him.
Yeah, it is weird, because you look at his stat sheet and he's got one good year, one bad year, one good year, one bad year, and this would be the year for the good year. But I'm not sure he was so disappointed that he was moved from the Chicago Bears. I think it left a bitter taste. So the Bears would have to make an attractive offer.
Theoretically, could you do it? I just don't see it happening. And part of it is they want to get their bang for the buck, so to speak. And he's very big into the analytics of it, of, looking at the guy's injury history, games missed already, how old he is. That's one of the reasons Mac was moved. He doesn't play a complete season. And so you're playing a lot of money for a guy that gets hurt every year. And so, if you're paying a guy $15 million, $10 million, $8 million, you've got to get that money back in production. And the older they get, especially if they got an injury history, the chances of getting that are less and less. So, as he explained to me in a conversation, when he goes, when the analytics say no, I'm not going that way. And so just knowing that tells me no on Quinn, because he didn't show up with these guys last year. So what's going to make him show up now?
He is a mysterious type of player performer. Swift has a question for you. He goes, why doesn't Greg like Justin Houston? Swifty thinks that he's a much more realistic option over Yannick.
I don't dislike Justin Houston. He's 34 years old. And so that just works against. See, what I'm trying to do is not look at the player, look at the age of the player and what he's done recently. Now, last year, Houston put up some numbers in Baltimore. The year before, he was in Indy playing for Flus and did shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and before that, he was in KC, and so Poles is with him, but you could see that, he was on the back nine of his career. And then you throw in the analytics, so he's 34 years old. I just can't see him. Now, he may have to if he's, I got to get a pass rusher, and there's nobody else out there.
Right.
He may have to do that, but I just think it works against what his philosophy is.
Swift says he thinks Houston is a good 1-year fit to mentor the younger guys, and he had 11 sacks and 8 sacks while he was at Indianapolis. I think I agree with your point regarding the age, but if you are going to sign a guy for a 1-year contract, then you make the exception to your rule of trying to acquire guys under 20.
I'm saying that it's probably. I'm not against the player.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing is I'm saying this through the eyes of Ryan Poles.
Sure.
And what has he done in the past? And so his history says no. But now, like last year, he brought in Riley Reef late. Riley Reef was 32, maybe 33. So you can't totally throw it out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a maybe. And if you're only getting them to really play on third down as a DPR, and you think there's enough gas in the tank for him to do it, then go ahead and do it. Like I said, I'm not criticizing the guy's a good player. And he really surprised me last year in Baltimore. What do you have? If you want to look it up, I think it was 9.5 sacks.
8.5, I think.
8.5. Yeah, I mean, he had pretty good production. Playing in a rotation. So it's not out of the question. I just, if he was 29 or 30, I'd say yes. I mean, to me, Floyd was the answer, in my opinion. But again, he's 31. And now there's people that have said, nobody said the Bears were in on it, but people have said that Floyd turned down better money to go to the Bills because he wanted a shot at a ring one more time. So could the Bears have been involved? They might have been. I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that.
Yeah, interesting. By the way, I was wrong. It's 9.5 sacks, and Swift, thanks you for the response.
Yeah, I thought it was 9.5 because I looked it up, I don't know, a few days ago.
You're always working, Greg Gabriel.
Well, no, I just didn't recall him being that productive. I know they were disappointed in him in Indy. I mean, I know that for a fact. I talked to the people in Indy.
Yeah.
So, but, when you look at they hopefully have fixed the run defense. They still need a pure speed rusher. They could have one in Dominique Robinson, but you just don't know. I mean,
exactly.
And I don't think you can expect a renaissance from Gibson. You can hope that there is from Gibson, but you can't expect it. And I think, you'd rather deal from a position of strength and because right now, as the roster stands right now, there is not a guy on this roster that'll scare another team as far as being an edge pass rusher.
Well, this has been a great episode for many reasons. And before we sign off, what about this long break now? 40 days until the guys are back in camp for the start of training camp.
It's the worst 40 days for a GM and a head coach.
You were going to say that.
And it has nothing to do with because we got nothing to do when we're on vacation. It's please don't get in trouble.
Exactly. Don't get in trouble. Stay in shape. I was also Tevin Jenkins. One of the things that he said at the press conference yesterday, he said that during this 40-day break, he was going to work on his pass blocking. which it was encouraging for him to hear. He said, I still need to improve my pass blocking. So that's one of the things I'm going to be focusing on during the break. Underline that. So
all these guys are going to continue. They're going to work out 4 or 5 days a week now.
Okay, because I know some guys go on vacation and
they might go on maybe a 1 week vacation, but they know as soon as they, 5 weeks from now, they got to go to work and they got to be ready to go. This is their job. They're getting paid a lot of money for it.
Yes, indeed.
Okay,
yes,
you can go on a week's vacation, but all these guys, you're going to see guys that might be 7-8 pounds leaner than they are today when they leave. Mm-hmm. They're today, during the course of the week, they do a group of guys every day. They meet with a strength coach and they're given their assigned weights and their assigned body fats and stuff. And what they're supposed to do is for workouts during the this time frame. It's not like you're off. You're not here,
right? But
you're not here, so you're not being supervised. Now, if guys are here, they live in town and they're not going anywhere. They can come over. They can go over to Halisol and lift. Mm-hmm. But you can't have contact with the coaches. I think they keep changing the rules. I think the strength coach, they can work with the strength coaches, but they can't do anything with the position coaches.
Okay. All right.
But it's, the big thing with the GM and the head coach is Jason Pierre-Paul on the 4th of July blows up a cherry bomb in his hand. That's what you worry about.
Yeah, he lost a finger. That thing was mutilated.
Yeah, I mean, he's lucky he played again. And,
exactly.
It's those types of things. Getting arrested for something stupid. Mm-hmm. It's like, remember who you are, remember what you got to do, remember what your job is, and be careful. Remember Hill Street Blues?
Yeah, be careful out there.
Yeah. Hey, be careful out there. That's what Flus should say when they leave this afternoon.
Indeed. And I just want to let people know that, as CJ says, that this is the worst 2 months of the sports calendar. You're absolutely right. But Greg and I have got really cool plans for our upcoming shows. We're going to continue to pump out shows. We're going to have more great guests like today's great guest, Jerry Azuma. And what a guest this guy was. Holy cow. And I'd love to have him back. He said he'd love to come back. We should bring him back and talk a lot more. And we're talking about bringing in a sports agent. I know a lot of fans would love to get to know more about the sports agent business and how that works. And so
I got a mailman coming to the door, which means I got to get a package. So we got to say.
You say goodbye.
I'm saying goodbye.
All right. Goodbye. Take care, my friend.
Okay, buddy.
I'll wrap it up here.
Okay, later.
All righty. That is Greg Gabriel. Always a pleasure working and talking football with him. But I just wanted to assure everyone that our upcoming shows over these next 2 months are going to be filled with football talk. I'm also going, if you've got ideas on what you'd love for Greg to get in depth, let me know, because I've been churning out some ideas. One of the things that Greg does really well is talk about offensive line play. So I was thinking about maybe cutting up some tape and him showing us some of the things that we should be looking for offensive linemen. I know we've done we've seen a number of articles of how to watch the game of pro football and so forth. I'd love to get Greg's take on that. And if you've got ideas for guests, let us know. Let's see what we got here. We got Swift saying, I thought he wanted to have the mailman as a guest. You know what, though, Swift? You just reminded me, I'm going to ask Greg if he'd love to have some of the followers come on. I'd love to see you, Swift, have a discussion with Greg about football. Talk about fireworks. We could have some big-time fireworks on that. So if you're interested on that, J2K says how to scout prospects. Yeah, that would be Greg taught a course that Danny Shimon of the Barroom Network was a pupil on. And so he's got he told me somewhere in his basement, he still has the syllabus and so forth. And so I told him, look for that. Maybe we can, borrow from that and talk about, the proper way of scouting and maybe just focus on a position. Cause, I think if we were to talk about scouting all the players, we could be here for a lot of shows. And Swift, we got a commitment from Swift. All right. I love it. And ST Scott says, Greg is checking the mailman's arm length. Cornelius is saying, discuss Terrell Lewis. That's a good topic idea too. I would pull out some of that tape from Terrell Lewis, both pro and college, and get, some more thoughts from Greg about that. Mark, you wanted to talk about Mark Colombo? So yeah, we can bring up some of that old stuff. No doubt about it. If the mailman's arms are over 34 inches, don't rule it out. I'm sure Greg would say that has to be a prerequisite for a mailman, because you need those long arms to deliver the mail into the mailbox from the vehicle so you don't have to lean out. So that would be a ton of fun to have. That would be hilarious. And Greg also loves to talk about TV shows. And I know he's a fan of a number of TV shows that we're going to be talking about. Not Heart to Heart. We're not going to talk about Heart to Heart or Kojak or McCloud and Benny Hill, Rockford Files. I don't think we're going to go back that far, but we'll definitely talk about some of the shows that he loves and get his take on stuff. So anyway, that is our show for today. I'm trying to think, do we have anything going on tonight? We do not. Barnaby Jones, Swift says, Postal Service taking the guys with Elite Wings fans. That's right. Elite Wings fans. And, have to have a good walking posture, right? The Fog Eye, another Greg Gabriel favorite. But that is it for today. I could stay here all day talking to you, but I got I got to walk these dogs. I'm babysitting my daughter's dog, and this dog is one pain in the ass. I love her, but she's a pain in the ass. She's asking me for treats and food and walks, and it's terrifying my old 15-year-old dog. So I'm gonna tend to the dogs now, and I want to thank you all for joining us live. Those of you who did not see the Jerry Azuma interview, you should go back and check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. And Dan Aguirre actually recorded a question for Jerry about what happened in that magical season, the 2001 season. What happened? We thought we were going to go deep into the playoffs, and Jerry had a great response to that. So for Greg Gabriel and all of us here at the Barroom Network, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.